The royal chamber aboard the Celestara, the flagship of the Orion Empire, shimmered with silver light. Thousands of stars glowed through the transparent dome ceiling, and their soft radiance reflected off the crystalline walls. Sitting in the middle of this beauty was Princess Alara Velan, heir to the most advanced civilization in the Orion cluster. Her eyes, bright like twin sapphires, were fixed on the holographic image floating above her desk. It was the image of a planet called Earth, small, blue, fragile-looking, and mostly ignored by the galactic powers. Yet somehow humans had caught her attention. Reports had come from scouts and trade vessels about a new species entering interstellar space. They called themselves humans. What puzzled the Orion scholars most was not their technology, which was primitive compared to the Empire's, but their survival record. According to reports, humans had endured wars, diseases, radiation, famines, and extinction-level events, yet somehow always managed to recover. It made no sense to the logical Orion mind. So Alara had summoned a council of scientists, historians, and one unusual guest, a human diplomat named Captain Elias Carter. The chamber doors opened with a soft chime, and Elias stepped in. He was tall by Orion standards, his uniform simple and practical, contrasting sharply with the elegant robes of the court. His eyes scanned the room calmly, his movements careful yet confident. Princess Alara studied him curiously. Unlike most aliens she had met, he didn't bow too deeply or appear nervous. He simply gave a respectful nod. "Captain Carter," she said in her clear, melodic voice, "thank you for accepting my invitation." "It's an honor, Your Highness," Elias replied with a polite smile. "I must say your ship is impressive." A faint smile touched Alara's lips. "You mean intimidating?" she teased.
Humans are honest creatures.
"I prefer honesty," Elias chuckled softly. "Then yes, it's intimidating." The princess gestured toward a floating chair. "Please sit. I've asked you here for something I find puzzling." He sat down, folding his hands on the transparent table. "I'll do my best to help." Alara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but curious. "Humanity has been observed to survive in conditions that would destroy most species. You endure war, disaster, even your own mistakes. Yet somehow your kind continues to live, rebuild, and even thrive. How do you survive, Captain? What is your secret?" The question hung in the air like a spark. The other Orion scholars leaned in, their glowing eyes full of interest. Elias thought for a long moment before answering. "That's not an easy question, Princess. But maybe the truth is simple. We survive because we refuse to die." The princess blinked. "Refuse?" "Yes," he said softly. "Humans are stubborn. We hold on. Even when logic says we shouldn't, we fight storms, hunger, pain, and fear. We adapt. We find ways to keep moving forward even when the world falls apart." Alara frowned slightly, not in disbelief but in curiosity. "But why? Other species accept fate. They adapt only if survival benefits their society. Your kind seems to fight simply to fight." "That's true," Elias admitted with a small grin. "Sometimes we don't even know why we keep going. Maybe it's because every human believes life has meaning, even when we don't understand it. We hope, we dream. That's what keeps us alive," the scholars whispered among themselves. To them the concept of hope was strange, an emotion they considered irrational. The Orion Empire had long replaced faith and hope with reason and calculation. Alara raised a hand, silencing the room. "Hope," she repeated. "A strange word. We have no exact translation for it." Elias looked at her kindly. "It's not just a word. It's a force. When things go wrong, hope tells us to keep trying. When we lose everything, it reminds us that maybe tomorrow can be better." The princess tilted her head. "And this, hope is what lets you survive?" "It's part of it," Elias said. "But there's more. Humans don't just survive alone. We survive together. We help one another. Even when we disagree or fight, we still reach out in the end." Her expression softened, curiosity deepening. "Together," she murmured. "We have unity, but it is enforced by law and duty. You claim yours is built on emotion." He nodded. "Exactly. Sometimes emotion is stronger than law. A mother protecting her child. A soldier saving his friend. A stranger risking their life for someone they've never met. That's what makes us human." For the first time, the princess looked uncertain. She had seen loyalty, yes, but in her empire, loyalty was duty. It was calculated, not emotional. After a moment, she said quietly, "If your kind survives through emotion, then that is both a strength and a weakness. Emotions can cloud reason." "True," Elias said, "but they can also light the dark. When reason gives up, emotion keeps us going. When fear paralyzes us, love or courage pushes us forward." The princess studied him silently, her mind racing. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a being from a lesser world. Yet every word he said carried a weight she couldn't dismiss. One of the Orion advisors, High Scholar Veyron, stepped forward with a sneer. "Princess, this human romanticizes chaos. Emotion is disorder. It has no place in the perfection of the Empire." Elias turned his gaze toward the scholar. "And yet, with all your perfection, you came close to extinction during the Great Solar Collapse, didn't you?" The scholar stiffened. "That is irrelevant." "It's very relevant," Elias interrupted calmly. "When your people lost their star, they waited for rescue. They waited for orders. Humans would have built shelters, found food, created warmth with whatever we could. We don't wait to be saved. We save ourselves." The chamber fell silent. Alara's eyes widened slightly. "You would have survived?" Elias shrugged. "We would have tried. That's what matters." For a long time, no one spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Finally, Alara rose from her seat, her silver gown shimmering like moonlight. "Captain Carter," she said softly, "I think I begin to understand. But I still find it difficult to believe that such an unorganized, emotional species can achieve what even the greatest minds struggle with." Elias smiled gently. "That's what makes us human, Princess. We don't wait for permission to live. We just do." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and uncertain. "Perhaps," she said, "there is more to your people than we imagined." He inclined his head. "Maybe one day you'll see it for yourself." When Elias left the chamber, the princess stood by the window, staring at the stars. Her mind was full of questions, not about science or politics, but about the strange, fragile creatures from that small blue planet. Humans. They lacked the genetic enhancements of her race, the long lifespans or the great fleets of the Empire, yet they endured, and for the first time in her life, Alara felt something unfamiliar, wonder mixed with humility. She whispered softly, "How do they survive?" The answer echoed in her mind, "Because they refuse to die." That night, as the stars drifted past the Celestara's hull, Princess Alara knew one thing for certain. Humanity was no ordinary race. They might be small and young, but their will to live burned brighter than any sun she had ever seen, and deep in her heart she knew this was only the beginning. Princess Alara Veylan could not sleep. Her chambers aboard the Celestara were designed for comfort beyond imagination. Soft, glowing walls, gentle gravity adjustments, and music tuned to calm the mind. But her mind refused to rest. The words of Captain Elias Carter repeated again and again inside her head. "We survive because we refuse to die." It sounded simple, almost childish, yet something inside her believed it. The human's voice had not been proud or arrogant. It had been calm, steady, and full of quiet truth. Humans were strange. They had built small ships that looked weak compared to Orion vessels, yet they crossed stars with courage that seemed limitless. She turned toward the large observation window, watching the blue planet Earth shimmer far below. Her scientists had told her that the human's world was unstable, full of storms, earthquakes, and unpredictable climates. Yet they thrived in it. How? She whispered to herself. Her curiosity had become an obsession. The next morning, Alara called for her chief of research, Dr. Reynard Tal, a tall, pale Orion with emotionless silver eyes. "Your Highness," he said, bowing low. "You requested me?" "Yes," Alara replied. "I want a deeper study on human survival patterns. Physiology, psychology, behavior, everything. I want to understand what makes them endure when logic says they should fail." The scientist frowned. "Princess, the human species is not worth such effort. Their bodies are fragile, their lifespan short, and their technology crude. They are at best a curiosity." Alara's voice became quiet but sharp. "Curiosity leads to understanding, Dr. Renar. Understanding leads to power. If we ignore what makes them strong, we risk underestimating them." Renar hesitated, then bowed again. "As you wish, Your Highness." Later that day, Captain Elias Carter was invited back to the royal deck. This time he looked more relaxed. Perhaps it was because he sensed the princess was not just observing him, she was listening. "I hear you've been studying my species," he said with a faint smile as he entered. "I have," Alara admitted. "But your data is incomplete. Numbers and records cannot explain what I saw in your words yesterday." Elias tilted his head. "Then maybe you need to see it and not read it." She looked at him curiously. "See it?" "Yes," he said. "Come with me to the surface." To Earth. The room went still. The Orion guards exchanged nervous glances. The princess had never stepped onto a foreign world, let alone one considered primitive. "That is not," began her aide, but Alara raised her hand. "Prepare a shuttle," she ordered. "We leave at once." The small transport ship descended through the upper atmosphere, the sky changing from black space to blue and white clouds. For the first time in her life, Princess Alara felt the warmth of a real sun on her skin. She had grown up surrounded by artificial lights and controlled climates. But this was raw, alive, unpredictable. Elias guided the shuttle toward a coastal city that had recently suffered a great storm. Entire neighborhoods had been flooded, buildings torn apart by wind and waves. When they landed, Alara looked around in shock. The streets were full of rubble, yet the humans were everywhere, working, helping, rebuilding. Children carried buckets of water. Old people handed out food. Rescue teams dug through broken structures. There was sadness, yes, but there was also life. No one waited for commands. No one sat in despair. Alara stepped out slowly, her silken boots touching human soil for the first time. "Why bring me here?" she asked softly. Elias gestured toward the people. "Because this is who we are. Disaster doesn't destroy us, it brings us together." A small child ran by carrying a box twice her size. She stumbled, and Alara instinctively reached out to steady her. The child smiled shyly and said, "Thank you," before running off again. That single moment struck Alara more deeply than she expected. There was no fear of her, no hesitation, just gratitude and warmth. They walked through the ruins. Elias greeted several people, exchanging short words. Everywhere, humans worked with simple tools, determination in their eyes. Alara's aide, Terran, whispered in disbelief, "Your Highness, they have no command system, no overseer." "Yet they move with purpose," Elias overheard and smiled. "Because we don't need orders to do what's right." Alara turned to him. "You mean you act on emotion again?" "Yes," he said. "But it works. Logic might tell you to save yourself first. Emotion tells you to save others. And that's what keeps our world alive." A sudden sound split the air. A sharp crack from the distance. The ground trembled as a damaged building began to collapse. People screamed. Without thinking, Elias ran toward the sound. "Captain," Alara shouted. "It's dangerous!" He ignored her, sprinting into the falling dust. The princess hesitated for a fraction of a second, then followed. Her guards tried to stop her, but she brushed them aside. Inside the half-collapsed building, they found several humans trapped under debris. Without hesitation, Elias began to pull away the heavy beams. His hands bled, but he kept working. Alara froze for a moment, shocked. He wasn't analyzing, planning, or calculating. He was just acting. Instinctively, she joined him. Her enhanced strength allowed her to lift heavier fragments. Together, they freed the trapped people one by one. When the last survivor was pulled out, the building finally gave way completely, but by then everyone was safe. Alara stood outside, her clothes covered in dust, her hands trembling. The humans around her cheered and thanked them both. One woman hugged Elias tightly. Another clasped Alara's hands with tears in her eyes. "You saved us," the woman said softly. Alara looked stunned. "I did?" "Yes," the woman whispered. "Thank you." For the first time, Alara felt something she couldn't name, something powerful and bright. It wasn't duty or pride, it was connection. That night, sitting by the ruins under a canvas shelter, Alara watched the humans rest. Some were injured, some exhausted, but every single one smiled. They shared food, told jokes, comforted one another. Elias sat beside her, a bandage wrapped around his hand. "So," he said quietly, "do you understand now?" Alara nodded slowly. "I think I do. You survive because you help each other. You survive because you care." He smiled faintly. "Exactly. We might not be the strongest or smartest, but when one of us falls, someone else helps us stand again. That's how our species has come this far." Alara looked at him thoughtfully. In my empire, strength is measured by power, not compassion. Perhaps we have measured wrong. Elias looked at the stars above. Maybe. Or maybe strength comes in many forms. Yours is discipline. Ours is heart. She considered his words for a long time. You said something yesterday, that humans refuse to die. I see now it's not just stubbornness. It's love, he nodded. Love, hope, friendship, and all of it. Those things make us who we are. The following morning, the princess addressed her small escort. Her voice was calm but carried new strength. Mark this day, she told them. For the first time I have seen humanity not as a curiosity but as a mirror. They show us what we lost and the will to feel. Dr. Renar frowned. Your Highness, are you saying emotion has value? Yes, Alara said firmly. It has more value than we ever imagined. Elias watched her quietly, knowing something had changed inside her. When their shuttle rose back into the sky, Alara looked down at the people waving from below. The city was broken but alive. Smoke rose from the ruins, but laughter echoed through the streets. She turned to Elias. You said you survived because you refused to die. I believe you now. But there's still something I don't understand. What's that? He asked. She looked at him, her eyes bright. You don't just survive. You rebuild. You create beauty out of destruction. Why, Elias smiled. Because surviving isn't enough for us. We want to live. As the Celestera ascended into orbit, Alara stood by the window again. But now when she looked at Earth, she didn't see a small, fragile world. She saw strength wrapped in kindness, and courage born from compassion. And deep inside, a seed of change began to grow. A quiet realization that her mighty empire, for all its perfection, might learn something from this small blue planet. Something priceless. The Celestera cruised quietly through space above Earth's orbit. The ship's hull gleamed under the sunlight, its engines humming like a distant song. Princess Alara Valon stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. Her eyes no longer carried the cold sharpness of royalty. Instead, there was warmth, a spark of curiosity and reflection. She had seen Earth. She had seen what humans were made of, and it had changed her. Elias Carter stood beside her, hands folded behind his back. He too stared at the stars, but his thoughts were on the future. You look different, Princess, he said softly. You've seen something powerful, haven't you? Alara smiled faintly. I have seen truth. Your people taught me more in 2 days than the Empire did in 2 centuries. He chuckled. That's quite a statement. It's also quite true, she replied. The Orion Empire believes perfection is strength. But I think now, before she could finish, the lights flickered. The ship shuddered. A sharp alarm echoed through the bridge. The communication officer's voice trembled. Your Highness, we've lost contact with the homeworld. All subspace channels are dead. What? Alara's voice rose. That's impossible. The Imperial network never fails. Except it just did. Elias muttered, frowning. Within minutes, chaos swept through the Celestara. Technicians ran from station to station, trying to restore the signal. Screens flashed with static. Energy readings fluctuated. Dr. Renar appeared on the bridge, looking pale. Your Highness, something has happened in the Valen system. A massive solar surge, stronger than anything recorded, has destroyed the main relay satellites. Communication, navigation, and energy grids are collapsing. Casualties? Alara asked quickly. Renar hesitated. We don't know. The surge may have reached the capital world itself. For a moment, silence fell across the room. Alara's heart pounded. Her home, her people, the mighty Orion Empire, could be burning under the light of its own star. Prepare a rescue fleet, she ordered. Renar shook his head. Impossible. The surge affected hyperspace coordinates. We can't jump until we recalculate the routes. It will take days. Elias stepped forward. Then we don't wait. We find another way, Renar frowned. Captain, this is not your concern. Elias looked at him steadily. When people are in danger, it's everyone's concern. Alara's gaze flicked between them, between her emotionless scientist and the human who acted on instinct. She made her choice. Captain Carter is right, she said firmly. We leave immediately. Plot the safest manual course and prepare medical teams. Renar hesitated, then bowed. As you command. The Celestara moved through the stars, slower than usual, guided by manual input. The crew worked with tense focus. For the first time in their history, the Orions faced uncertainty. Their perfect systems had failed. Their confidence was cracking. Hours later, a transmission broke through the static. A weak voice came from the speakers, a distress signal from the Orion homeworld. Massive destruction, cities offline, radiation levels rising, need assistance. Then it cut out. Alara gripped the edge of the console. Set course now. Push the engines! The Celestara accelerated. When they arrived days later, the sight before them stole the breath from every throat on the bridge. The once golden world of Vela Prime was shrouded in gray clouds. Fires burned in the atmosphere. Great energy storms danced across the surface. The mighty capital of the Orion Empire lay broken. Alara stood frozen, her voice barely a whisper. "No, this cannot be." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, his tone calm. "It can. But it doesn't have to be the end." She turned to him with wide eyes. "We have no rescue plan. Our systems are down. How can we save them?" Elias looked at her and said simply, "The way humans do it, one life at a time." They descended through the stormy atmosphere, the ship shaking as lightning danced around it. When they landed near the ruins of the capital, Alara stepped out into a world she barely recognized. Buildings once made of crystal lay in shards. The air was filled with dust. Orion citizens wandered aimlessly, injured and afraid. Dr. Renar approached, scanning the readings. "Radiation pockets everywhere. Infrastructure destroyed. We can't stay long." Elias ignored the warning and began organizing survivors. "We need shelter, clean water, food. Prioritize the children and the elderly." The Orions stared at him in confusion. He wasn't an officer, yet he gave orders with calm authority. More surprisingly, people obeyed. Alara watched as humans and Orions from the Celestara worked side by side. Soldiers carried the wounded. Medics built makeshift clinics. Engineers used damaged drones to construct power lines. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and it reminded her of Earth. As the hours passed, Alara walked among her people. Many bowed weakly when they saw her, their faces pale with despair. "Your Highness," one young officer said through tears, "the Empire is finished. We have lost everything." Alara knelt beside him and said quietly, "No. We have lost much, but not everything. Look around you. As long as we breathe, as long as we stand, we have hope." The officer stared at her, stunned. The princess who once spoke only of logic and order was now speaking like a human. Elias overheard her and smiled faintly. Later that night, a second solar storm began to rise. Warning sirens blared through the ruined city. The ground shook. Renar shouted, "The magnetic field is unstable. We must evacuate." "There's no time," Elias said. "We can't get everyone to the ship in time." "Then what do you suggest, human?" the scientist demanded. Elias pointed toward a half-collapsed transit tunnel. "We take shelter underground. The tunnels will protect us from the radiation." Alara nodded immediately. "Do it. Move everyone there." Renar hesitated again. "Princess, the tunnels are unstable." "Then we make them stable," Alara said firmly. "We refuse to die." Those words, the same ones Elias had spoken days ago, gave the Orions new strength. They moved quickly, carrying supplies and helping the weak. The first wave of the storm hit as they reached the tunnels. Dust rained from above. The ground trembled. Inside it was dark and cold. Children cried softly. Alara stood near the entrance, watching the storm rage outside. She turned to Elias, her voice quiet but steady. "Now I understand. Survival isn't just about strength or reason. It's about will," he nodded. "It's about choosing to live even when everything tells you not to." She smiled. "Then today, we choose to live." Hours later, when the storm finally faded, the survivors crawled back to the surface. The air was clearer now, the fires slowly dying. The capital was still broken, but there was life. The Orion people looked to the sky and saw their princess standing beside a human captain. Alara raised her voice, carrying across the ruins. "My people," she said, "our empire was built on perfection, and now perfection has fallen. But we are still here, and as long as we stand together, we will rise again. We will rebuild, not because our technology demands it, but because our hearts do." The crowd murmured, then grew louder. For the first time since the disaster, hope returned to their eyes. Renar whispered, "She speaks like one of them." Elias smiled proudly. "Maybe that's what the Empire needs." In the following days, humans and Orions worked side by side to restore order. Alara herself helped deliver supplies, ignoring the golden laws of royal distance. She slept among the workers, shared their meals, and spoke to every survivor she could. Her hands, once soft and unmarked, were now covered with dirt and scratches. But she didn't care. When Renar tried to insist she rest, she replied simply, "Leaders don't rest when their people suffer." It was something Elias had once said, and now it had become her truth. Weeks later, when the capital's first lights flickered back on, Alara stood at the balcony of the rebuilt command tower. The air smelled of new beginnings. Elias joined her quietly. "You did it," he said. "Your people survived." "No," she said softly. "We survived. You showed us how." He looked out at the city below. "You would have figured it out eventually." She smiled. "Perhaps. But now I know why humans endure. You don't just survive the fire, you walk through it and come out stronger." Elias looked at her with respect. "And now you've done the same." The princess nodded slowly. "Maybe this is how we begin again. Not as rulers and subjects, not as aliens and humans, but as survivors." Above them, the stars shone brighter than ever, silent witnesses to a new bond between worlds. The first rays of the sun cut through the smoke still rising from the damaged capital of Vela Prime. Princess Alara Velan stood on the balcony of the partially rebuilt command tower. Below her, humans and Orions moved side by side, clearing rubble, rebuilding shelters, and distributing supplies. The city was far from whole, but life had returned. Alara felt a strange mix of pride and humility. She had watched her people struggle with chaos and fear, and she had seen how humans faced it with simple determination and courage. "Your Highness," Elias Carter said softly. Joining her, "The survivors are doing well. They've organized themselves into work groups. Even the children are helping." Alara smiled faintly. "It's remarkable. They don't wait for orders. They see a need and act. We, the Orions, have always relied on structure, and yet they accomplish more in hours than we sometimes accomplish in months." Elias chuckled. "That's because humans survive with heart, not just mind. They feel responsibility for one another, and it works." Alara looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "I think I understand now. Logic alone cannot sustain life. It is our will, our compassion that makes us endure. Perhaps the Empire has measured strength wrong all along." Elias nodded. "Perhaps." Over the next few days, Princess Alara organized a council, including her senior advisors, Elias, and representatives of the humans who had survived the disaster. The goal was simple: plan the rebuilding of Vela Prime and prepare for future disasters. The first meeting was tense. Orion officials were skeptical of the humans' methods. High Scholar Renar Tal began sharply. "Princess, these humans are untrained, emotional, and unpredictable. We cannot rely on them to rebuild an empire." Alara raised a hand to silence him. "And yet," she said, "they survived when our systems failed. They organized food, shelter, and medical care without waiting for orders. They did what we could not. And in that they taught us a lesson we cannot ignore." Elias added gently, "It's not about replacing your systems. It's about combining what humans do naturally, cooperation, courage, initiative, with the skills of your people. Together you'll rebuild stronger than before." The council was silent for a long moment. Finally, a senior Orion engineer spoke. "It is unusual, but the results cannot be denied. If we integrate humans into our rebuilding efforts, we might restore the capital faster." Alara nodded. "Then that is what we shall do. Humans and Orions will work together, as equals in this effort." The next days were filled with planning, labor, and teaching. Humans and Orions worked side by side. Orions taught advanced engineering, while humans taught flexibility, teamwork, and creative problem-solving. Alara moved among them constantly, her hands no longer clean, her robes marked by dust and labor. She spoke to everyone, encouraging them to persevere. One morning, she visited a group of children who were helping carry supplies. One little girl tripped and fell. Alara quickly helped her up. "You are strong," the girl said, eyes wide. Alara smiled. "Not just me. We are strong together. That is how humans survive and how we will survive." The word stayed with the girl, and she ran off to help another worker with renewed energy. Alara watched her go, a warm feeling in her heart. Despite the rebuilding, challenges arose. Power grids failed repeatedly. Supplies were scarce, and some Orion officials resisted working alongside humans. One morning, Dr. Renar approached Alara with frustration. "Your Highness, some of your advisors are questioning the wisdom of this partnership. They say humans are unpredictable and may cause further problems." Alara looked at him calmly. "And yet, when disaster struck, humans acted without hesitation while many of my own people waited for orders. Do you not see, Dr. Renar, that predictability is not always strength? Courage and initiative are just as important." Renar looked unconvinced. "Princess, the Empire has rules and procedures for a reason. Chaos cannot be trusted." Alara's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "We survived the chaos, Renar, and we learned that life is not always orderly. To thrive, we must embrace courage, compassion, and adaptability, not just rules." One evening, Alara walked through the half-rebuilt city with Elias. Fires burned in controlled areas to melt metal, while humans and Orions carried debris and supplies. "Your people are learning," Elias said, pointing to a group of Orions carefully following the humans' instructions. "Yes," Alara said, "but it is not just learning. It is a transformation. I see now what humans meant when they said they survive by refusing to die. They do not wait for perfection. They act, they care, they continue." Elias nodded. "And that is a lesson the Empire needs. Not just for this disaster, but for the future." Alara stopped, gazing at a group of children planting trees along a cleared street. "They rebuild not only structures, but hope," she whispered. Weeks passed. The city slowly regained its life. The streets were cleaner. Medical care reached everyone, and communication networks were partially restored. But the princess understood that this was not the end. She called another council meeting, this time including representatives from every major human settlement on Earth. "I have seen how your people survive," Alara said. "You do not rely solely on technology or orders. You act with courage, compassion, and creativity. That is why your species endures. I wish to bring that strength into the Empire, not to dominate, but to guide." The humans were cautious but curious. They had never seen a ruler speak with such humility. "You will have a voice in the rebuilding," Alara continued. "Your methods will be considered alongside our technology and strategies. Together we can create a stronger empire, one that survives not only because of power but because of heart." The Orion Council was divided. Some officials were reluctant to follow the princess's direction, believing that human emotion could threaten order. Others were inspired by the results they had seen in recent weeks. Alara did not waver. "I do not ask you to abandon reason. I ask you to combine it with courage, compassion, and initiative. The future will judge us not by how perfect we are, but by how well we survive and care for one another." Elias stood beside her, quietly observing the reactions. "You've done more than rebuild a city," he said softly. "You've begun to rebuild hearts," Alara nodded. "And hearts are what will carry us forward." Over the next months, humans and Orions rebuilt VeilAPrime together. Streets were cleared, water systems restored, and schools reopened. Citizens who had lost hope began to smile again. Children played in parks, laughing, while adults worked side by side in workshops. Alara spent her time learning from the humans. She practiced simple communication methods, observed problem-solving techniques, and even joined in physical labor. She discovered that leadership was not just issuing commands. It was inspiring others to act. Elias sometimes watched quietly, amazed at how quickly she absorbed lessons. "You are learning faster than anyone I expected," he told her one day. Alara smiled, wiping dust from her hands. "Perhaps the most important lesson is that strength is not measured in power alone. It is measured by resilience, compassion, and will." One afternoon, a young Orion soldier approached the princess. "Your Highness, the humans. They saved my unit during the last storm. I did not expect them to act so boldly. I see now. They are remarkable." Alara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes. And now you have learned something important too. Strength is not just about fighting or orders. It is about helping, acting, and refusing to give up." The soldier nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. By the end of the 4th month, VeilAPrime was alive once more. Fires were gone, streets repaired, and a sense of purpose had returned. The bond between humans and Orions had grown strong, mutual respect replacing doubt and fear. Alara stood atop the highest rebuilt tower, looking at the city below. She could see humans planting trees, Orions teaching construction, Children playing and families laughing. The disaster had not destroyed them. It had united them. She turned to Elias. I asked how humans survive. I think now I understand. It is not just hope or courage. It is the combination of heart, will, and action. It is refusing to give up and helping others when they cannot help themselves. Elias smiled. And now you've brought that lesson to your empire. Alara's eyes sparkled with determination. Not just my empire. The future of many worlds depends on learning this lesson. The question now is, will we continue to survive together? Elias looked at the horizon, where the sun set over the rebuilt city. I believe we will. And perhaps we will thrive too. Alara's lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. The disaster had tested her, challenged her beliefs, and forced her to witness the truth. And now she knew that the strength of humans was a gift the Empire could no longer ignore. Above them, stars blinked in quiet approval, watching as two species, different in origin, united in purpose, prepared to face the future together. Months had passed since the solar disaster shook Vela Prime. The capital city, once in ruins, now gleamed with new life. Humans and Orions had worked side by side, rebuilding homes, roads, schools, and hospitals. What was destroyed had been made stronger, not just physically but in spirit. Princess Alara Velan walked along a wide street, observing the renewed city. Children ran past her carrying small flags of both Orion and human design. The hum of machinery blended with laughter and conversation. It was the first time she had felt complete peace since the disaster. Beside her, Captain Elias Carter moved quietly, hands clasped behind his back. He had become a constant presence in the princess's life, a teacher, a guide, and a friend. You've done something remarkable, Elias said softly. You've taken a disaster and made it a lesson for everyone. Alara looked around, her silver blue eyes reflecting the sunlight. No, Elias, humans did this. They showed us how to survive, how to care, how to act when all seems lost. I simply learned from them, Elias smiled. Then perhaps that is what makes humans extraordinary. We don't wait for perfect conditions. We act, we endure. We help one another, Alara nodded. And now the Empire can endure too, if we remember that lesson. The princess had called a grand assembly. Leaders from across Orion worlds alongside human representatives had gathered for the first time in centuries. The chamber was filled with anticipation. Alara stepped to the podium, her robe shining in the light of the crystal hall. Her voice rang clear and steady. My friends, citizens of Orion and representatives of humanity, she began, we have faced disaster and seen our strength tested. Our home, our empire, once thought invincible, was shaken to its core. Yet here we stand, alive, resilient, and united. There were murmurs of agreement, and the room seemed to lean in, eager to hear her words. Through this challenge, I have learned a truth that I wish to share with all of you. Strength is not measured by power alone. Strength is measured by the courage to act, the will to endure, and the compassion to care for others. The assembly was silent for a heartbeat. Then whispers spread, slowly growing into applause. Alara continued. Humans have shown us what it means to survive. Not because they are physically strong or technologically advanced, but because they refuse to give up. Even when everything is against them, they help one another. They act without waiting for orders. They carry hope in their hearts, she paused, letting the words sink in. It is time that we bring this lesson into the heart of the Orion Empire. Together, humans and Orions, we will create a future where strength is measured not only in might, but in heart, will, and unity. Elias watched the audience. Some Orion leaders looked skeptical, but many nodded, understanding dawning in their eyes. Humans smiled, proud yet humble, feeling respected for the first time in this distant galaxy. Alara stepped down from the podium and walked among the crowd. She shook hands, offered words of encouragement, and listened to stories of survival. Everywhere she saw resilience, courage, and kindness. She stopped near a group of young Orion officers who had learned from humans during the rebuilding. You've done well, she said. But remember, this is just the beginning. True strength comes from continuing to act with courage and compassion, every day in every choice. One officer, a young Orion woman, nodded solemnly. We understand, Your Highness. We will remember. Alara smiled, a spark of pride in her heart. Later, she and Elias walked along the rebuilt riverfront. The water was clear, reflecting the bright sky. The streets were clean, and the sound of children playing filled the air. "You have changed the Empire," Elias said softly. "No," Alara replied. "I have only begun. Humans have changed the Empire. They have shown me that survival is not just about control or perfection. It is about action, courage, and caring for one another." Elias nodded. "And that lesson will last longer than any fleet, longer than any law, longer than any starship." Alara looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Yes. Perhaps the greatest strength in the galaxy is not in technology or fleets, but in the heart of a species that refuses to give up." As evening fell, Alara called for a ceremony of unity. Both humans and Orions gathered in the city square. Lanterns floated in the air, reflecting on the clear river below. Music played, a combination of human instruments and Orion harmonics. Alara stepped onto the stage, looking at the faces of two species that had once regarded each other with suspicion. "Tonight," she said, "we celebrate survival. We celebrate courage, compassion, and hope. We celebrate the union of humans and Orions, not as conquerors or subjects, but as allies, as friends, as survivors together." The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans and Orions clasped hands, smiled, and laughed. For the first time, centuries of separation and misunderstanding melted away. Elias stood beside Alara, watching the people celebrate. "I think they understand now," he said. Alara nodded. "Yes, and not only them. I understand now as well. Humanity is not a curiosity. Humanity is a teacher, of courage, of hope, of life itself." The celebration lasted long into the night. Lanterns floated skyward, carrying wishes, dreams, and gratitude. Alara watched, feeling a sense of peace she had never known in the structured halls of the Celestara. For the first time, she understood the true meaning of survival. It was not merely staying alive. It was acting, caring, and refusing to give up. It was building bridges instead of walls, helping instead of judging, hoping instead of surrendering. She turned to Elias. "Do you think the galaxy will ever see humans as they truly are?" Elias smiled faintly. "Not yet. But perhaps one day, Princess, other species will learn what we already know. That humans are remarkable not because we dominate, but because we endure, together." Alara nodded, a soft smile on her lips. "Then let us make sure they never forget that lesson, not in words alone, but in action." In the following weeks, humans and Orions continued to collaborate. Trade resumed, education programs were launched, and scientific knowledge flowed freely between worlds. Alara oversaw the creation of a new interstellar council, with equal representation from humans and Orions. Its purpose was not to control, but to share knowledge and strengthen survival strategies across the galaxy. Elias helped organize Earth's human representatives, teaching them diplomacy and interstellar communication. He had become more than a teacher to Alara. He was now a bridge between two worlds. Months later, standing on the rebuilt observation tower, Alara looked out at the city that had once been in ruins. Streets thrived with activity. Children laughed and played. Adults worked together, repairing homes and sharing stories. She thought of the words she had first asked Elias. How do humans survive? Now she knew the answer. Humans survived because they acted, because they cared, because they refused to give up, and because they helped one another in ways the galaxy had never seen before. She turned to Elias, eyes bright. The Empire has learned the greatest lesson from a small, fragile planet. We are stronger now, not because of ships or weapons, but because of heart. Elias smiled. And the humans? They've survived again, but this time, they've changed the galaxy with their lesson. Alara's gaze returned to the horizon where stars twinkled like tiny promises. She whispered softly, "The galaxy will never forget what humans taught us, and neither will I." The princess's words spread through the Empire, and slowly the story of Earth and its people became legend. Humans were no longer regarded as fragile curiosities. They were symbols of endurance, courage, and hope, a shining example of what it meant to survive in the universe. Alara knew that the galaxy would face many more challenges. There would be storms, conflicts, and crises. But she also knew that humans and the lessons they had shared would endure. And for the first time in centuries, the Orion Empire felt truly alive, not merely perfect, but resilient, compassionate, and united. Together, Humans and Orions had learned that the true strength of any species was not in perfection, technology or rule, but in heart, will, and the courage to survive together. Above Vela Prime, lanterns floated silently toward the stars. They carried the dreams of two species, one small, fragile, and tenacious, the other mighty, disciplined, and finally learning the lesson of heart. And in the quiet light of the galaxy, a new dawn rose.